Welcome to the Modernize Podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the Cold Fusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to Modernize Podcast, CFML News Edition. It's episode 138, March 8th, 2022, and I'm joined by the big man himself, Luis Majano. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. How are you, Gavin?
Doing good. Good to have you on here.
Yeah, man.
We're getting a pretty good mix with these episodes, and it's good to see the feedback too. People like the different opinions, and usually if we announce it early enough, people want to come and pick your brains in the chat. So glad to have some people in there. So you guys get that chat ready for us. We'll try and keep up as we get through our things. But first up, let's thank Ortus Solutions. So obviously Ortus Solutions makes ColdBox, CommandBox, ForgeBox, TestBox, and plenty of boxes out there. What are some of the ways you want us to say thanks to Ortus Solutions for helping with this podcast and all the things that Ortus does? You're reading, so say So basically, some of the ways we want to say thanks back to Ortus Solutions is like and subscribe our videos on YouTube. Help Ortus reach for the stars is our new little push here. So we want you guys to help us with some of our most common repos. Make sure you star and fork our repos up on GitHub. Helps us get a little more attention and everything else. And we have a little tool that Eric just put up on ForgeBox called CommandBox-GitHub. And what that does is if you basically run it inside of an application of yours on your site, it will actually go out and then auto star all the repos that you use, all your dependencies. And so you can set that up. So that'll make your life easier. You don't have to worry about which modules do I use, which things am I using. By running that, you can just basically like them all at once. Put some stars on there for us. And of course,
very cool module, actually. I think you should highlight, Gavin, that module actually uses all the authentication OAuth paths that through CommandBox, through the CLI. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, so basically, just when you start that one up, if you do just the help command, so GH space help, CommandBox helps really great, and then it'll give you all the steps you need. Once you authenticate your GitHub account, and then basically you can run it from any app you have. Also, we'd like you to subscribe to our podcast on your podcast app if you guys listen on your app, and leave us a review. That's really helpful too. And of course, we have CFCasts, which is a free and paid account, so obviously help us there, and we release new content every week. And then Ortus has a book, 102 ColdBox MVC quick tips and tricks that Luis wrote on Gunrobe, and we're still bugging Brad. We're actually adding more and more little tips to his repo so we can get his CommandBox tips and tricks went out. I think last week's video when he did the webinar was good content. We can probably just go take that, transcribe it, and that's half a book right there. So, but those are some of the ways you can say thanks back to Ortus Solutions, because obviously without Ortus Solutions we wouldn't be able to do this podcast. And there's another group of people that make this podcast possible. You want to tell us about our Patreon supporters, Luis?
Yes. We have 36 patrons right now. They're providing about 96% of the funding for Modernize or Die. This kind of fluctuates back and forth here, but we're really excited about this. If people didn't know, if you become a patron, you get lots of goodies with us as well. So if you go at I believe it's the silver or the gold level, you will get a subscription to CFCasts and a ForgeBox Pro account as part of your patronage. So
yep, really, I think it's actually even bronze. Like we got pretty low levels to get some awesome stuff there. But we'll tell you more at the end when we get there, for sure. Definitely. But it's
but everything that comes through Patreon, it really goes to open source and our charity as well. So it's really important to us. We do this day in and day out to support open source. So we really thank everybody, and we try to make them part of the community and part of the direction of everything we're doing.
Yep, for sure. And so this week, before we get into the news even, we've got a new little section. We're calling it the Modernized Spotlight. And so this is something that we've been wanting to do for a while. Obviously we always go on about modernize or die, and obviously that's a little bit gloomy for some people, but we wanted to spotlight some of the positive stories, some of the use cases, the real benefits you get from modernizing. And we had one just pop up in the Box Team Slack the other day. Don Bellamy, basically shared his little story, and it was awesome to see. And I think those are the types of things we want to share. And so we're going to try and put this Modernized Spotlight on the podcast when we can, and get sort of more stories from you guys out there. So if you have a story, of something where modernizing, using CFML the modern way has helped you, has given you some benefits, or there's some cool little win you had, maybe you showed up some Node guys or something, we want to hear about it so we can share it and, give people, some positive vibes about, what you can do with modern CFML, because we know it's all great, but some people need a little help, a little budge, and these types of things will be like fuel for that fire. So yeah, you want to tell us what he said, Luis? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited for this spotlight. I think it's something that we've been trying to do at Ortus, which is bring awareness of all the tools that are out there to build, really amazing modern applications and secure applications with any of the CFML engines. And I think it's important to know that this is not, your grandpa's Cold Fusion anymore, right? We've gone a long way, and we have so many tools that are even more advanced than in any other languages at this point. So this story was really amazing from Don Bellamy. They basically had an incident on their network, and which was obviously not CF related, just to point that out. And they basically had to rebuild a bunch of machines, right? So they obviously pinpointed a very legacy app that was in CF11 and another one in CF8 inclusive, which was basically an API. And Don basically said, you know what, I'm just going to rewrite the whole API, to bring it from the legacy darkness into the modern light. And it was amazing because he said that he rewrote an entire API legacy application using ColdBox 6 in 3 days by himself. I mean, this is a single developer guy, right? And he was able to tackle, the building of a full-fledged API from legacy to modern in 3 days. I don't know if he slept. I don't know if he ate, right? I don't know how many cups of coffee he drank, but he did it in 3 days. So that's just amazing. I mean, he just wanted to be thankful, and he posted to us. So I think he might have slept something in there because he was still very coordinated in his speech in writing this, right? Yeah. But I think it's amazing to see how somebody can take a tool like ColdBox and CommandBox and really just, like I always tell Jorge, that Nike slogan, right? Just do it, right? You basically go at it, you take authority, you go and you just do it. So I was so blown away by him. I think it would be great to bring him on board and actually give him his testimony on what exactly had to tackle his challenges and stuff. So I think I might bring him on for our soapbox edition.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I mean, that's the thing is like, he was upgrading from an app that was CF11 and had been upgraded from CF8, and then he had to upgrade it to CF 2021 for the security, audit stuff. And that was the thing is he wasn't sure what was going to work, what wasn't working, and they just decided it was easier just to go with, ColdBox API with ColdBox 6 and he said without the tools we create and work on a daily basis, it wouldn't have been possible. And that's the thing too, like, and I know we talk about a lot of tools that Ortus builds, but you have to remember too that there's a lot of other community members that build little tools, and we build on top of them and work together with them. And so, like obviously Ortus does a lot of work in the community, but we also couldn't do what we did without other members of the community, building. And on ForgeBox, you see that there's not just Ortus, there's a lot of great people doing a lot of good work. And one of the modules we're talking about later today is actually built on a module that somebody else built too. So there's other things. And so, but yeah, so just wanted to shout out to the community as well there. But it was really cool. Good to see, and yeah, it'd be good to hear a little bit more about some of the things he ran into, and and it happens all the time. I'm rebuilding an app that was built 4 years ago right now, and the conversion and modernizing of an older app is actually harder than just building it fresh, looking at what the code did, using the new tools to do it. And so yeah, I definitely feel that like the benefits are there, the benefits are real. So
yeah, I think that it's important to also highlight that modernizing your current stack is way faster and way cheaper, in money and in man hours than going to a new stack. If you are basically moving your entire business logic that you've built and gathered knowledge through so much time, and you basically say, you know what, I'm going to just move to another language stack and build it from scratch. There are issues with those approaches. It doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just means that the knowledge that you've gained from 10, 15 years of building that application and the intricacies of the engines and languages are going to be different, right? So you're going to be presented with other challenges and other areas that you did not account for, right? Because you're just thinking that you're moving to a new language stack because it feels modern or it feels, there's the new thing on the block, right? So I think that the decision makers really need to look at those cost benefits ratio, because if you just take like Don, an app that it's a legacy, application, and just moving it into modern times, and in 3 days time, he was able to get it up to speed, up to secure code quality, right? Applying all the best practices in CodeBox to do that separation of concerns. That's a big win, right? And it didn't take him a year, right? Obviously, every application is completely different, right? But I think it's really important to point out there's really a cost-benefit ratio, right? If you decide to modernize, and if you decide to actually completely move to another language stack, I think that in concept, it's a great idea to say, hey, I'm just going to redo the entire application in another language, right? Whether it be .NET, whether it be Python, whether it be, Node.js, there's always going to be intricacies in no matter what language you choose, no matter, right? Yeah. No language is perfect. No stack is perfect. They all have their issues, right? And they all have their intricacies. And if your team is not up to par with the knowledge on that language or frameworks, right, you will feel a pain and there will be a hurdle, right? It's just normal, right? It's whatever we decide to build. So I think it's something that as a decision maker, you have to have really solidified and know that there are all these unknowns that will occur, right? And I think the majority, from what and we both have seen, right, they don't see it from that point of view. They just see it from the point of view that, maybe the CF is not as it used to be, right? And they move away. But in all reality, the tooling that we have available right now, it is really amazing. We can do pretty much anything. We're building SaaS applications as we speak, right? With Timebox and all these advanced features, all these continuous integrations, code quality, right? Code metrics. We're doing it all, right? The problem is that awareness that has to go out there. And, I think that stories like Don's stories are really amazing to see that if you stick with the modernization approaches, you can get really a cost benefit really easy.
Yeah, for sure. And something that people may not even think about, but even something like using JavaScript in your front end. There's we all use JavaScript. We've used it for years. But how many times has it bitten you on the butt when you do console.log and you're using a non-simple value? You have a reference object and it looks the same in the console because it evaluates it later. And people get bitten by that. It's just, you're just not used to it. You're thinking in your mind, let me dump this object out and see what's in it. Let me do something, let me dump it out again. The console log, something as simple as logging, we do it all the time. It doesn't behave the way you think it should. And little things like that, like you said, you know the language, you know how to use it, but it's those little things that, can bite you. And in any language and in anything, you've got to learn the tools, you've got to learn the gotchas. And so, it's definitely a real issue. So.
Yeah. And those things take time. And I think that's the important factor that the decision makers need to hear, is that those things take time. Right. Yeah. And we all are developers and we all want to play with the cool new things. Right. It's just part of what we do. Right. It's a challenge. It's something great. But when there's money on the line and when there is your business on the line, I think it's also important to know that, you don't want to play. Right. If you go all in with the new stack, you're going to have to train. You're going to have to learn all the intricacies. Right. And that brings a cost. Right. So I think that's something that I always encourage decision makers to always put that in a balance, right? And decide, is it much better to just completely change this because maybe now the requirements have changed? And that's a really great approach because, maybe this is something that has to be real time. Maybe this is something that needs to run on specific micro embedded processors. Okay, then maybe CFML is not the language of choice. Maybe it's something like I go to core Java, right? Or C#, right? So I think that requirements always change, and I think that you just don't have to jump on the latest BAMTech wagon just because it's cool, right? Or because we feel, right, that there's a perception that CFML doesn't have that tooling, right? Which we do.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, so that's a new little spot. Like I said, we're going to try and spotlight some of those modernized stories and, and sort of, just basically talk about the different benefits that you out there in the community have. So if you have some, please share with us on Slack or whatnot. And they don't have to be our tools too, like Fusion Reactor and stuff is a great tool. Like there's a lot of other stuff out there, We just want to hear some stories and yeah. So. Okay, but let's talk about some news and events now. So another thing sort of in our whole Cold Fusion CFML initiative here is we've got a Built with Cold Fusion repo that we started just recently at Ortus. And we're basically, the idea is trying to showcase, a list of companies and sites that are using Cold Fusion, and then a little bit of information about them too. Obviously, we're curious, like which sites are using which Ortus products, and so we've created this little repo, and it's kind of nice. We've already had a few pull requests before we made a big announcement. People saw the repo and have jumped on it, so it's good to see. I think Image Connections and Lucid Solutions have already added their stuff. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about why? And I'll share my screen for those watching.
Yeah, I think this was something that we always get, right, Gavin? We always are like, oh, who's using CFML, right? Or which companies are using it and stuff. And I think there's always information gathered left and right. There's a lot of like built with services, and they try to, inspect headers and inspect certain things to discover things. But we discussed this internally, and what we wanted to do is actually create just a data repository, right? And we're going to be using this data repository to be building a front end for it. So we're going to be building a front end, basically called Built With, and you're going to be able to navigate and search for, companies and sites that are using Cold Fusion CFML. And at the beginning it was just Ortus Technologies, but we decided at the end to basically make it any ForgeBox technology. So this basically allows anyone to basically say, hey, it uses these slugs from ForgeBox. And basically this allows us to do some data. And then we're going to create, some mining tools for it and everything. And everybody can contribute. And this way, it can be a central repository for the community where they can basically just add whatever they want in terms of exposure and sites, and we'll promote it. Right.
Yep, and we even have a key there for if they're Patreon supporters or not, so we'll have a little badge for them on the site.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just simple JSON in here. You can see there's a couple other people already in the repo. Like I said, Image Connection and Lucid. But basically, yeah, it's a simple little repo, but if we start adding to this, and then obviously, Ortus has a lot of customers, and we've got to make sure that we're allowed to publish that information. And, if it's not something you necessarily want all the details out, you can just say that you're using this technology and only put what you're comfortable with. Obviously the site out there is built with CFML. That's great to know. If you're willing to share some of the other details, cool. If you're not, then we understand that too. So, it's one of those things where, we could have just gone and added a lot of sites on there, but we wanted to give it as, the people that run the organization give the option to do that. And, so it's going to be a cool little information thing, And even inside our own Ortus products, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, which one's using ORM? Which one's using Quick? Which one's using Content Box? Like, you start to get a few sites and, somebody wants an example of something. Sometimes it can be hard to figure out what's using what because, obviously sites have evolved over time. Different tools come out different times, and, we don't refactor everything every time a new product comes out. So it's a pretty cool little idea, and yeah, I can't wait to get that up and running, and then we'll have to showcase the site we use and how we build the site to read that as well. That should be a little fun little library too. So
Yeah, definitely.
cool. We also had a quick little update here. CFML Spreadsheet version 3.4.0 was released, so you can get a new sheet info method to return properties of a specific sheet within your workbook instead of having to loop through them all. They're always adding updates to that. It's a great tool. And remember, this used to be the Lucy spreadsheet, but it actually works in Adobe and Lucy. So CFML Spreadsheet available up on GitHub, and I believe it's up on ForgeBox as well. So Cool. We have a few webinars coming up. You want to tell us about the next one?
Yeah, definitely. So, who is it this March? Oh, it's you, Gavin. Yes. So, you are up this month doing our Ortus webinar, and you're going to be talking about obviously ForgeBox. So, I think this is a really cool webinar that I'm really looking forward for you to present on, because it's going to bring that awareness of this directory. I think it's really important that we start disseminating even more information about ForgeBox, about how this repository can help anybody in the community to share and store their ideas, packages, whatever they're building on. Even if it's a simple CFC with a simple function on it, you can share it really, really quickly. Simple command box command, and you're up and running. And I think that's where you're going to be showcasing is basically how to commit your code to ForgeBox, right?
Yep.
How to work with it, and really just bring really interesting approaches to modern CFML by sharing and using modularity, right? So I'm really looking forward to your webinar this month.
Yep, and it's building on top of what I'm working on for CFCasts. So I'm working on some publishing ForgeBox modules, and we're looking at a lot of different things. And like I said, a lot of people think you have to be using CodeBox to use ForgeBox, and just like we say, you don't have to use Wirebox inside a CodeBox. You can use it standalone. We have to keep telling people, but I want to just show people how easy it is to to make a little module, how easy it is to put up on ForgeBox, and how you can install it from ForgeBox into your app, which isn't even a CodeBox app, and so how you can wire up some of those things. So we're definitely want to make it more easy for people to get up and running. And a lot of times we talk about using all these tools and we forget the basics, like the first few steps, how to get up and running, how to make a simple package, and then like, okay, well now it's not a simple package. How do I add that? What if we take something that someone else has built, and how do we make that available in ForgeBox? And so I'm looking at doing something where we take someone's code essentially with permission, and add it into a CodeBox module and make it available. So that series is going alongside this webinar, but this webinar is ForgeBoxiciation. So come get a taste for it, and you'll see how easy it is. And I've already got a lot of it mapped out, so I'm still working on the final details. But I think it'll be a good one for all of those who have used ForgeBox before, and or maybe those who haven't. But just doing my research, a lot of the articles and videos and everything, they're using all the information from a few years ago. ForgeBox has been updated so much lately, so I'm going to show off some of the newer things too, because before, you needed to be able to zip up your code or have a Git repo with a zip, and with the S3 storage, you don't even need a repo anymore. You just need a folder with some code in it, and you're done. And it'll zip it up for you, publish it for you, stick it up on S3, and link it all up, and I mean, it's so easy. So register today. You can go to the ortussolutions.com/events/webinars to find out more about it. But it should be a good one. I'm doing it, so if it's not, you can tell me all about it. And it's a webinar, so chip in the chat, and we can answer your questions as we go. So
very cool, very cool. Yeah, I think it would be cool to showcase that you really can store anything in ForgeBox, right? So we're starting to even basically store full sites or full applications, because it's version, right? It's completely version. The command box takes care of the dependencies, right? So after you've done your CI, all your testing, you basically publish your full site, and then you can basically leverage command box to just deploy it.
Pretty crazy. Okay, next up we have a Hawaii CF user group. The CFUG in Hawaii is going to be having Mark Takata talking about moving your legacy Cold Fusion application to modern CFML. I see a trend here. Have you seen this trend, Luis? Modern CFML. It seems to be the keywords lately.
The keyword lately, I guess. They're catching up now, so that's good. We started a trend, Gavin. We got to feel trendy now.
Yep. So that's going to be March 24th. It's going to be 1 p.m. Hawaiian time. So I believe that's 3 p.m. Pacific. So Central was 5 p.m. But Mark's going to be talking about, old legacy code in our Cold Fusion applications. How do you move it to modern CFML? Why should you move it to modern CFML? And I think he brings up some of the same points you were talking about as well. It's like, basically, modern CFML is smart. Easier management, rapid deployment, fewer bugs, modern responsive front ends. We got all those things going for us. So it'll be good to see that and see what he's talking about there. And anytime we're talking modernization, it's a good thing for CFML. So they are going to be doing that on Adobe Connect, so we're sharing the link here. And yeah, would be good to see that one. Next up,
I think we should attend on that one and kind of help out Mark on the chat.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, next up we have a special happy birthday announcement. Docker, I guess Docker is going to be 9 years old this month, I guess. So the Docker community is having an all hands meetup, and so it's going to be March 31st, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. They said join them in celebrating Docker's 9th birthday. The virtual events be an opportunity to come together with Docker staff to learn, share, and collaborate all things Docker. So it's a little 3-hour sort of mini event, and we'll put this in our event section too. But we want to just spotlight it. Can you believe Docker's 9 years old already? Does that make you feel old?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I think it felt just like yesterday where you and I were like, oh, look at this, and we ended up in their conference, and now, like 7 years later, I think it's like, oh my gosh, it's 9 years old.
Yep, I remember Mark Jude talking about it way back in the day. We were still talking about Vagrant and stuff like that, and
Vagrant was the hot sauce.
Yeah, for sure, it's so different. But so that's a pretty cool little event. Good to see what they're talking about, celebrating, and lots of the key Docker community will be there as well. So we'll be sharing that one here as well. And then, of course, Adobe's got a workshop next week as well, so March 9th, and another one coming up April 21st.
I see here, so they're doing March 9th at 9 a.m. Central
European time.
Oh, Central European time. That bit me.
Yep. Ooh. Yep.
So Central European, so 9 a.m. Central European. So I'm guessing that will be -9, so it'll be like 2 a.m. Central time.
Yep.
So 2 a.m. Central time. So I guess he's targeting the European market here. And then on Thursday, April 21st, the same time, Damien and
Bruindongs.
Yep. Bruindongs.
We think.
Do we know what kind of workshop they're going to be doing, Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a full-day workshop covering all the facets of Adobe ColdFusion. So it's really great for newer developers or someone that needs a sort of a touch-up. It's very similar to what they cover when you're doing the exam. And so they did have one. Brian Seppi did a American time zone one, I believe last month, and we're hoping to get a couple more of his as well. But if that time zone works for you, it sounds like a really good workshop, and they're offering them basically every month through summertime. So it's a lot of availability if those dates don't work for you. But they're making a big push on it, and from what I heard, it was a really good workshop. So if that works for you, there's a couple of links here. And then if you need to, they have more stuff up on the meetus.adobeevents.com/coldfusion, and that has upcoming webinars, etc. as well, like the ones we mentioned from Mark Takata as well. So the full list is updated pretty regularly now, so we'll try and keep you guys up to date as it comes up, and we'll go from there. So next up, we have our CFCasts content.
All right, so we got Brad Wood releasing some very cool stuff for Command Box 5, which is our webinar series. So it is now available on CFCasts.com. All webinars are free, so you can go in there and start viewing all the content.
Yep, I know we have a couple of series, including mine, that are in process, so we're trying to get some more videos out for those very soon. So keep an eye out, and we'll keep you up to date as we roll them out. So remember, CFCasts.com, and then if you got any requests for certain type of content, let us know too. We're happy to take requests and build up our library there. So okay, conferences and training. First up, we have the Docker Community All Hands, like we mentioned. So Thursday, March 31st, 8 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So we already ran over that one, so we'll jump forward to the next one. And you want to tell us why you're speaking at DevNexus this year?
So DevNexus is finally coming back in person. Really excited to be attending DevNexus again this year. Obviously closed for COVID, but it is the largest Java conference in the US. More than 3,000 people attend. And it's just an amazing conference to go check out, not only about Java, but about every dynamic language out there is represented. So Brad and I have been going for many years now, and we always come out with great ideas, great, networking as well, and being able to evangelize on all tooling that we have from our community. And this year we are very lucky to be presenting as well. So Brad's going to be presenting on what's a pull request, contributing to open source, and this gives him a chance to kind of showcase all the things that we're doing with open source to the Java community. And then I will be talking about Alpine Js, declare and react with simplicity. Alpine Js is a very lightweight JavaScript framework built by Caleb Porcio. Really amazing little framework, small, lightweight. I think it's like 8K or something like that. But it brings a lot of declarative knowledge, just like Tailwind, and reactivity like Vue.js. It actually feels like Vue.js, but it's a very lightweight approach, especially great for legacy applications, Gavin. So if you have a legacy application built on jQuery or Bootstrap, and you want to bring it forward to the next level, you can do it with Alpine very easily. You don't have to have a build process in place. You can just drop the core library in place. They even have released lots of components, I think, in the last 2 weeks that will basically integrate with pretty much anything that jQuery did. So this gives us a chance, at least with Brad, to present about modernization techniques as well. But this conference is really, really cool. Actually, I'm going to try to talk to Pratik and see if we can get some discounts for our community for DevNexus if people want to attend. This is in downtown Atlanta. Great venue, great food, and great events.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. Yeah, I mean, I know Brad, like he always comes back and he's all excited about some different ideas of things that we can do. But a lot of time he's like, it's really cool from a CFML side to see all the pain and struggle that they have, because Cold Fusion makes it so much easier to do a lot of things that, like you have to really fight Java to do. And so he gets a kick out of that too. He's like, oh yeah, we've been doing that for like 6 years in Cold Fusion, or yeah, look at this command box thing I built. Look at this, it's running on the JVM. And so
the last time we went, I think it was before the pandemic. I think it was 2020 was the last one, if I remember correctly. But we were in a session, and it was a Spring Boot session, right? And they were basically introducing default values for arguments in the functions. And we were like, what? Right? And, with the Cold Fusion has had this for years, right? And they were all, so excited about, having a default argument on the Spring Boot framework. And I was like, wow. And then, about routing, adding a one specific route. So, it's an eye opener as well. That it's all about perception, Gavin. That's what I learned. It's all about perception.
Yep. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And so, so I always thought it's really interesting, and I know that you guys get a kick out of that for sure. But we were also mentioning Docker. DockerCon is coming up May 10th, so that's a free and online virtual conference. I see a question there. Daniel just asked, is it in person only for DevNexus? Yes, DevNexus is in person only. So, but back to DockerCon. DockerCon's great. We obviously attended the in-person ones, but the last few years I've been doing online, and it's been a huge success. It's really neat to have that many options too, as far as the content. They have a lot of just open chat rooms and everything to talk to people, but they also have like 50 million different rooms available for different things, and they do have the option of replaying them. So a lot of times you'll actually have different time zones. They'll have replays of the event, so if you're in a different time zone, you can still catch up with the content and then attend the ones live. So that's really cool, and that's at docker.com/DockerCon. DockerCon with an N, sorry, at the end. But that's May 10th. Then another one I'm looking forward to, and hopefully we get approval. I'd like to go to the US Vue.js Conf down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yeah, this is in my old college neighborhood, so Fort Lauderdale. So I know the place, and the place is really cool. So I don't know how much conferencing you're going to be doing, Gavin, if you go down there, but because it's all beach and all party. But I think you should go anyways.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
And like go represent.
Yep, I think it'd be a good little time to, like I said, if there's ever people out in the community that want to attend, there's a lot of people doing Vue. It'd be good to get like a little CFML group together to hang out and, in the evenings and spend some time with the community, but also learn a lot of stuff about Vue. As I
Yeah, no.
mentioned previously, Vue 3 is something that I really need to dive into. All the code I'm working on now is all Vue 2, Vue 2, Vue 2. So I'm really looking forward to like just immersing myself in Vue 3, and I think that's a great way to do it. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So it's a great conference. June 8th, our workshop day, and then June 9th to the 10th is the main conference. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to be sending a delegation from the Ortus team to be there and represent. So if you're in the area, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, Boca, Del Rey, come by and hang out with us. Maybe we should do like a little meetup or something, Gavin.
that's
Got
what
to
I'm
talk about
thinking.
that.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. It'd be
Yeah,
great to
let's
do.
work on
And
that. Maybe we can announce it on the next CFML news.
yep, for sure. So we also have some into the box updates. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so our dates are pretty much solid here, September 27th through the 30th. We're back in person again. Probably we'll do a hybrid virtual as well since it worked out so great last year. But our in person is solid. Now we're bringing the workshops back now that all this COVID situation is dying down. So we're gonna have 2 days of workshops. We're actually deciding on these workshops right now as we speak. We want to get them out and about in this month of March, hopefully, at least the workshops. And we're going to be starting a call for speakers next week. So things are getting solid for this September 27th and 30th.
Yep. And then obviously there's a few perks if you are a speaker and you're selected. So, that makes it even easier to get there. But definitely tell your boss you're going to be gone September 27th through the 30th. And then, and we'll announce that as soon as we have the forms up to get some ideas in there. So we're always looking for new speakers too. We like the community members. It's not an Ortus event. There's always a lot of community speakers. We try and limit Ortus to less than half. It's hard sometimes because everyone's asking for different things, but we want to get a lot of community members in there. So put your name in the hat, and we'll put it through the selection committee, and hopefully we'll see you there one way or the other. And then into the box of the TAM, I know we're still tentative on that, but it's looking December 1st and 2nd, right? That's roughly the time zone.
Yeah, so we're still kind of waiting for the local government to basically remove restrictions on meetings. Things are opening up left and right, so we're just kind of waiting for that go ahead. Once we get that go ahead, we'll kind of set the venue. But those are dates that we want that work for the entire team. So 2 days in Latin America. Hopefully, all our Latin American brothers and hermanos and hermanas can come over and be there.
Cool. And then CF Summit, we're still waiting on news for Adobe. We've reached out and asked them if they've got any insight or any information, but hopefully we'll hear from that. Usually it's later in the year. I'm not sure if they're going to have, any information there. And then we haven't heard anything about CF Camp either, so we're going to, try and see what's going on there. I know that they haven't done the online version, so they've had in a little hiatus, but I know that they're hoping to get back. It's just regulations and COVID and everything is the main reason they can't go forward. So we'll see what happens there. We'll let you know as we find out. So, and then if you want more conferences, this isn't enough for you. We got comps.tech has a great list of conferences, and we'll be putting up our information there, so you guys can see the call for speakers right there as well, and we'll be on the list. So we put that on our to-do list too, Luis.
I know. We have to add that to the list.
Yep. Okay. Let's talk about some blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. And the first one up is Ben Adele. He's been doing some work, and one of his blog posts, I think it was earlier in the week, it's probably here somewhere, he accidentally got upgraded to MySQL 8. And so in the process, he had a little adventure, and he shared his blog, obviously, about that. But the most recent blog post he's just posted was talking about using common table expressions, or CTs, to create derived tables in MySQL 8. And I used Postgres a lot lately, and the client we were working with used CTs quite a lot, and they're pretty cool. I didn't even know what they were before I started working on it, because I just hadn't been exposed to them, but it's pretty neat. Have you used them very much, Luis?
I use them in Oracle and in SQL Server. Basically, it allows you to do basically what the in-memory kind of temporary results and stuff. I actually didn't even know that MySQL actually had support for them. So it's actually very interesting to see that because they can come in very, very handy if you need to kind of do something in line, really easily. Obviously, the performance crazy person in me always tries to stay away from them because obviously they got to construct these things in memory. But there are ways to achieve it in other approaches, right? But it's a great tool to have.
Yep, and he even mentions recursive common table expressions, which might get your head hurting a little bit, but it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, and like I said, a lot of these things, maybe you have to look and see if it's worth the hit on it, but it does a lot of things that, you may want to do in Cold Fusion instead normally, but it's really neat. So there's a lot of interesting things that we did. We did some crazy things for reporting and everything, and it made it so much easier with
Yeah.
CTEs. So that's pretty cool. So he talks a little bit about that. And of course, he was sharing a lot more as he went as well. So we'll have a few more coming up here. But Charlie was also talking about some Fusion Reactor release information. So it looks like recent database and API time features that they mentioned here. So I'm going to share
Time
my
and API
screen.
times. Yeah.
Yeah, so he mentioned that 8.7.4 added a new time feature or whatnot, but he wanted to sort of reiterate that as well and talk about some of the other posts. So as usual, Charlie's very detailed, and so he's given us a lot of great information here too. So talking about how they've added columns for the database and API time in the request log. I haven't tried the API timing. I wonder what that's going to be like. So he has some screenshots in there as well, so you can sort of see how much time was spent in the database and how much time was spent in the API, and for the whole duration. So
Yeah, I think it also measures the API time measures time doing CFHTTP calls. So if you're basically
interesting.
calling APIs, it'll try to give you, how much time was spent on, those HTTP executions.
Yep. And as usual, the comments are just as valuable as the content, so read through that as well. But yeah, Fusion React is a great tool, and they're always pumping out new releases, and it's good to see. Charlie does a lot of presentations for them too, because obviously Charlie uses tools like Fusion React to help customers. So it's really good to see that.
He knows his stuff.
Yep. So it looks like we had a flashback tweet here from John Barrett too. So he was talking. There's little tweets about CFML and when he started using it and everything going around lately, and so he shared this one. It's a bit of a flashback. So I guess
Yeah, I'm seeing it here. Yeah.
the University of Hawaii used to use Cold Fusion in an ICS class 415 way back in 2005. And so if you click on it, you'll actually see this old Cold Fusion article. So Introduction to Development of Dynamic Web Applications. And so this is, way back 2007 is this version of this file, obviously. But yeah, kind of interesting. He's talking about CGI and Perl and Cold Fusion markup language and evaluating websites and, you know,
So web services
yeah. So it's
being all
kind
the rage at that time.
yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see CFMX sequel. So lots of interesting stuff. So, if you want to check out what legacy code was like, this is how they taught it. This is how they were teaching it back in the day. So pretty cool, a little flashback. I mean, I remember doing a, a project back in university, and I'd already learned. I was working for the university writing Cold Fusion apps at the time, and we could build our senior project in like anything, and everybody was doing Java and all these crazy things, and I'm like, I whipped that thing out in Cold Fusion so fast and blew everybody away because it was just so easy and it looked so professional because it's a web page, just compared to having to draw stuff on. In the old days of Java, you had to like draw things on with coordinates and you had to make your own buttons and so much easier.
Good old days. Good old
Yeah,
days. Fun good old days.
exactly. So it was a kind of a nice flashback there. Okay, so this one here, I saw you were actually active on Twitter talking to Ben Nadal because he was talking about how 10 years ago to the day he attended a presentation from Tim Cunningham about version control on the database, the final frontier. And
Yeah.
I actually remember hearing about this, But yeah, so Ben was like, you know, now in 2022, you can't imagine not tracking database schema and changes and schema migrations without being a version control. Like the old days were such
Yeah,
commando
I
days,
mean, I
cowboy
definitely
days.
think that was the final frontier at that time. I think it was when I started using actually a project called Liquid, which was basically a Java project to track your database, right? And then we had all kinds of tooling like Redgate to actually synchronize your databases, produce those SQL change scripts, right? So I think it's always been a pain to kind of address. So it's really him basically going through that approach, right, of how to get migrations ready for, especially using DDL, which is the data definition languages, and then the data manipulation language. So really details always from Ben, and then how he's tracking and coming up with a convention to actually build his migrations, right? So
Yep.
I took a stab at him basically because Eric Peterson and built the command box migrations project back in 2017, and basically everything that he's done here is there and more, right? We actually released a version 4 which includes seeders, so you can actually even seed your database with even production data if you wanted to, right? But I think that the moral of the story is that it's very important to version your database, right? Change sets, not only data but also structure, right? And I think that's why I tweeted at him and say, hey, look at the command box migrations because it's already built, right? And we've been using it for years now, and I think it can bring a lot of happiness to developers that want to track their database, because we all know that doing things manually is just not happy. And the
Yep.
cool thing about creating the command box migrations is that you can unit test them. So it's very important because you can actually not only have those migrations, but you can actually run them up, run them down, run them specifically, right? Have a test database that you want to run them against. So I think that the importance of the testing aspects of these migrations, especially dealing with data, is important. So I think that's why we built command box migration. So I love
Yeah.
his blog post. I think it's very dear to our hearts here at Ortus. So um, hopefully Ben didn't dislike that I took a dig at him to look at CF migrations. But there's a lot of goodies in ForgeBox, like I told him, and I think it's important people, like, again, they don't know what they don't know, right? So
Yep, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, he started that back in 2011, I think he said. He was embarrassed that he had his blog up for that many years without doing it. Like that's still pretty impressive that he started the migrations back then. So he already had a system. He was already doing it way
he
before.
mentioned Liquid Base. That's cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool. Like he mentioned some other names, and looking at Ruby on Rails for inspiration, and a lot of people have done that. And so I really like that blog post. And yeah, like I said, these days it's so neat to be able to do that. And one thing I really like about that too is when you push out your branch, you always forget, wait, did I run that migration yet? And sometimes you need to run the migration for the new branch, but it can't run for the old branch because you're changing things that wouldn't work in the current code. So a lot of times you want to push code, but you've got to coordinate it with a DBA, and the DBA can actually approve these as part of your deploy process and stuff, so you don't have to worry about it. So there's a lot of things like this that just really automate a team. If you're a one-man show, like, maybe you don't need this. Maybe you can do this when you're working. But if you start to have a team and everything, all these little tools, they really save your bacon. I don't know how many times we used to push out code and forget something. Was it an environment variable that we hadn't created yet, or were we supposed to change an Nginx rule or something, or this all sorts of things out there. And so these types of tools definitely make that easier.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when I was working at Esri, I had to actually do my change sets in my change file that somebody else had to pick up and actually go execute, right? And it was more of like, oh, I hope it works, right?
Yeah.
So kind of deal. So I think it's always been a pain, right? So I think that nowadays people should be version controlling all their change sets for the
Yep.
database.
And especially with, like, sharing between team members. If you create a new table, how does your new team member know that table exists, or it needs to exist, or what data should it have, or anything else? So, like, just all these things, make it easier. And that leads us to the next one, where Ben Adele, he was moving his SQL to a per application data source in Cold Fusion 2021. because as he mentioned, he recently upgraded from version 5 to 8. And so in the Scourer, you have to update all his data source configuration in his production environment as well as his local Docker environment. And then, he basically came down to the point where it's like, he had to go into Cold Fusion Administrator and, there was all these issues, and he said it was a huge point of human failure. And so basically, he was thinking, I should just use this in the, application file. They have a way for you to configure that directly in there. And, basically he wanted to add that into the application data source. And so basically, he said you want it to be in source control too, so it can push out, but he obviously said that credentials should never be in the source control. Don't store them in source control. But I thought this was interesting because he said he basically took it over. It took him, basically a few mornings to do it and everything. And the cool thing is he found CFconfig. So, CFconfig has actually helped him figure out how to go change the Neo data source file and, where the data was saved and all this stuff. And obviously, using command box Docker image, CFconfig is just there. You can use CFconfig right away, and you can do all sorts of stuff in there, and it kind of makes your life easier. So, basically, command box CFconfig was doing stuff there, and and so he was saying he was already using it for his local Docker container, and so. Anyway, so it was a nice walkthrough talking about all the different things, and it was kind of interesting to see how he basically went from start to finish. And, like I said, I really like the learning process and the things he runs into and the way he solves the problems he runs into. So in the end, being, through all his stuff in his application, CFC here. So you see, he's putting all the URL components in here. He's got all the allowed commands. So everything, basically right in the application CFC. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember when they came out per application data source mappings, and the documentation has not been very good from both CFML engines, to tell you the truth. I always had a hard time finding exactly what to put in there. But yeah, I mean, that's why Brad wrote CFconfig. It was just dealing with all these issues from the CFML engines is a pain. So that's how basically we started just leveraging CFconfig for everything to have reusability. But I feel Ben's pain here. But
Yeah.
I'm glad he was able to document this very clearly.
Yeah,
They're a great lifesaver to use them.
Yep, for sure. And so obviously his settings are in the data source right in the application CFC. With CFconfig, it reads them on startup with command box automatically, but you can use that to manually run a command to take those CFconfig settings and overlay your actual real server too. So there's all different ways to work with it, and CFconfig is a great tool. So I'm glad Ben had fun in the nuts and bolts, but that's I remember the pain. Brad spent hours and days just trying to figure out if I change this one setting, in Lucy, where does it put it? Or if I change this one setting in Adobe Cold Fusion, where does it put it? And basically we'd have to make a change and then do a diff and see what changed. It was crazy the process he went through. And so every version comes out, we got to check and see. And that's the best thing about CFconfig. It makes your settings easier to migrate from one version of the same engine or even different engines when compatible, because obviously some things are just different. But
and it kind of has become the standard for portability for CFML. I mean, the Lucy folks have actually basically adopted CFconfig as the standard for the reusability of settings. So, hopefully Adobe can do the same, because then, everybody just using CFML engines will have one standard to store the actual settings for the CFML engines.
Yep. Okay, next up, we have another one from Mark Takata. So trying out Redis for Cold Fusion caching. And so he said he had a customer reach out to him about moving their session storage to Redis, and so he decided to play around with it. And so, as he starts with, it's dead simple to get yourself a Redis instance going, and basically walks through that. So if you haven't messed with Redis, this sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, the base support in the Adobe engine for Redis is there. So getting it to work is pretty straightforward. It would have been great to. Oh, here it is. He put out the docs. That's what I was gonna be concerned about, because last time I saw them, they were not very. Oh, now it's there, so it's completely docked. Very good job.
Yep. It's good to see Mark being so active with the community, getting his blog posts out there and webinars and everything. It's
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
big improvement. So I really like seeing him out there, and you know, and hopefully he can make it into the box this year. I think last year we had an issue with travel restrictions and everything. So, uh,
Yes.
but yeah, okay. So we also had a blog from Nolan Irk, and this one started because there was a question on Facebook, and they were like, basically someone said, why do cold fusion jobs require a computer science degree when they don't teach CFML in college? And so, everyone was, back and forth and a little bit. And so Nolan
Yeah.
sort of wrapped up his thoughts and put it in a blog post. And so what are your thoughts on it? Obviously, you're an educated person and you do a lot of hiring for Ortus and everything. What are your thoughts on someone says, why would a degree be good for a developer looking for a cold fusion job?
Well, I think that depending on what kind of degree, right? I mean, we have people on the team with art degrees, right? People on the team with marketing degrees. So I think that obviously, I kind of disagree with the statement that you have to have a degree, right? Because for me, I'm mostly looking for passion more than a degree, right? Obviously, it helps. And here's where I would say that if a person has a degree in computer science or engineering, they stand out to me. And the reason is that I know what it takes to go through that degree, right? I went through it doing computer engineering, and I didn't even learn cold fusion, right? And so it doesn't matter what you learn there. The what I find that is attracts me in that sense is that they learn how to solve problems, right? And my engineering degree, that's what it taught me. My engineering degree taught me a great base in mathematics, a great base to develop algorithms, a great base to do design patterns, and to really get the actual core concepts of software engineering design and analysis. And I think that if you do not have that, you will gain it only through experience, right? So that is the difference. If somebody has gone to school and had received a degree in computer science or computer engineering, they will have an edge in that area, right? So they will have an edge in the sense of knowing, right, how to tackle a problem firsthand, right? How to actually present that software analysis and design, get exposure to languages, exposure to different things that a person that may not have a college degree might not have received that, right? And if they didn't receive that from a college education, they must receive it from somewhere else, right? And that most of the time could be experience, right? Or self-taught knowledge. And like I said, for us at Ortus, it's not a requirement, but it stands out, right? And you can have a different conversation with a person in that sense because you can basically if it's like if you know somebody that knows design patterns, right? Your language changes, right? Because now you're talking in terms of patterns and terms of approaches, right? That you are on that base language. So very interesting philosophical blog post by Nolan, right? But yeah, I think at least in my opinion at Ortus, I'm always looking more for passion for people. I will always take passion over knowledge. Let me put it that way.
Yep, for sure.
Knowledge can always be received, can always be taught and mentored, but I don't think passion can be taught.
Yeah, like I always talk about it in a couple of different ways with developers. You got your 9 to 5er and you got your lifer. The 9 to 5er checks out at 5 o'clock and doesn't think about programming, doesn't think about anything, doesn't think about his problems till he shows up on Monday. You got the lifers, and that's me. I can't stop thinking about these things. Like it's just not possible. And there's different types of people. Like Brad. I'm sure he goes to bed and sleeps about command box. Like just that's how he is, and it's
Huh,
just a different thing.
sleep. Brad
Well,
never sleeps.
well, he does eventually, but yeah, that's the other thing too. I think like I mentioned, the design patterns and those types of things, like you just don't learn um, as quickly or as easily. So I think the college does give you that. The other thing too is for me, usually at college, the way I've always looked at it is, it's like, okay, can this person, basically show up to the lectures, because you have to show up eventually. You have to get the work done without, supervision. You're not getting micromanaged. Can they work by themselves? Can they work in a group even though they don't want to? Can they get stuff done on deadlines? Can they stick through it and get it done even though they hate it? College is, it's a test of, your testament really as well. It's like, so if you can put all that work in and come out with a degree, then usually what they say is, okay, you've got a degree. Great. Now forget everything you learn. Like, this is how we do it, but it's a checkbox, and if you've got two developers that are really both pretty close and one has a college degree and one doesn't, that might be a deciding factor. So, like, it's probably not always a requirement, but you can usually weed out a lot of, options. It's just, that's the part of it. But like you say, I got my design Gang of Four book out the other day because I'm like, I need to touch up my design patterns. Like, I brought it over from New Zealand with me. It was one of the books I kept, and so yeah, it's one of those things. But again, I think even though they say it's a requirement, they say it's a requirement to have 20 years experience with Docker, and it was only 9 years old. Like, there's a lot of things that people put in requirements, and so it's not always a hard rule. But it does usually weed out the people that have just learned it yesterday and trying. So. But yeah, I think all the points you made are, perfect examples. There's a lot of things you learn. Like, I didn't learn cold fusion, but I learned a lot of different things about a lot of different things. And, it's valuable. Could I have learned it without it? Yep. But, there's certain things that I probably would have.
It's definitely valuable. I mean, I can attest that the engineering degree background that I received has helped me so much. 1,000%. I mean, more than 1,000%. I can't tell you how many times I still have my college books here, and I revert to some of them, because I remember, I saw this in low-level programming, and it gives me an idea for something to implement. So I think it's extremely valuable to get a degree in engineering or science. It really will benefit you no matter how you see it, right?
Yep, for sure. But again, just it depends. Specialty, like, there are a lot of other ways to learn a lot, boot camps and everything else. If you pick the right ones, there's a lot of things you'll learn in those too. So, but yep. Again, it was a nice one, thought-provoking. Got some good comments on Facebook too. So, we also had a tweet from Brad, just reminding people that CFML queries have member functions like arrays and structs. So a lot of people didn't realize you could do each and map and reduce and filter, and basically just like arrays instruction. It's kind of neat. And then I think Scott even replied saying Lucy has some things like slice and everything else as well. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's important to note that if you go to the modern CFML book, put the link here for queries, we've listed all those there. So I think that's more of a functional approach to these data structures in any language, and they're offered pretty much in any language at this point. So it's just becomes, your language becomes more fluent, and you stop basically creating a lot of assignments and a lot of variables if you start doing all these member functions. So I really encourage people to look at them.
Yep, that OOP course that Nolan did on CFCasts is really good too, learning some more functional things. Next up, we have a sort of a blog post on the community website from Brad, and so this one, a few people have been talking about, server security and command box and Undertow, and so he went through and actually scanned command box and Undertow with the OWASP Zap tool, and so he shared that. I'll share my screen. So basically, he walked through the process, and sort of shared the results here. So kind of neat to see that, and that tool is really, really powerful if you've ever seen it. Just, it does take a little while to get it configured, set up exactly the way you want. I remember seeing this in Pete's workshop several years ago. He was showing us, security, and he used the Zap tool. But yeah, so this is a nice little write-up from Brad, to find out more about that. So if you've got security concerns about using command box or Undertow server in production or whatnot, it's a great little write-up. Okay. So what else do we have here? Oh, Brad again. Man, that boy.
Brad again.
Yep.
It's a goodie, an oldie but a goodie, Gavin.
Oh, it is. So I thought it was funny, his tweet, he actually started a sentence and didn't finish it. And he said he tossed this tool, and I think he forgot the words up on GitHub. And so Charlie's like, you threw it away, you know? And so he's like, no, that's not what I meant. But
That's why Brad needs to sleep. See?
yeah, so he says he built this little thing. It's, in Brad's style, it's maybe not the prettiest, but it works. It's a SQL Server monitor tool, and he says it's really great for finding, processes with locks and blocking other processes and that type of thing. So yeah, so he's thrown up there on GitHub. So that might be kind of fun to play with too. I haven't actually had a chance to play with that, but you remember that from back in the day?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Brad usually, tosses all these tools out into GitHub, but his UI skills need some assistance there. So maybe we can spice it up, Gavin.
Maybe. Yeah, I'll have to get it running. I know that we have a couple clients running MS SQL that I could
Yeah,
hit it against and see what's going on. That's probably
yeah.
why
Maybe
he
we
was
can
using it.
wrap this up in a little module. Maybe even put it as a debugger panel for CB debugger.
Ooh, always got more ideas. Yep. Okay, well that wraps up our blog tweets and videos of the week. We had quite a lot, but we have a few job postings here too. So we have 6 jobs posted on getcfmljobs.com. So it looks like they're looking for a full-time Cold Fusion developer in Washington, D.C., full stack developer remote in Sacramento, California, a Cold Fusion developer in Connecticut, and we have an IT web developer at Everett, a senior Cold Fusion developer in GeoNorth Information Systems, and then we also have a database administrator with Cold Fusion at remote. So lots of good little links there. And then we have some other ones that I saw as well. I think a couple of them were mentioned in the main list, but Ortus Solutions up on the Ortus Solutions /about us /careers. For those watching, I'm sharing my screen. So we got a couple of jobs posted here too. So we got the senior Cold Fusion developer in the USA team. Make sure that the time zone and the citizen or resident work visa is a must. And then we also have developer of web design. So I just always guess with this one here, but
Yeah,
but
we're
yeah.
actually revamping all our career sections, so we're gonna have a new look. And there's actually 5 positions available for the Salvadorian team. So I think Edgardo's posting them on CFML jobs, and we're gonna be updating this page pretty soon into more of a career section. So that's on the works.
Okay, and then we had Everett Community College, which I think was mentioned in the Get CFML job, and then the consortium, which I believe is actually in Washington D.C. So that's quite possible that's the first one too. But trying to share those links. If you guys have other jobs, let us know. And I think the consortium one is the one that Dan Frederick sent me a week or so ago, and so that one is there now. Okay, so lots of good jobs opportunities there. But let's talk about ForgeBox module of the week. And this one, I can't believe we haven't covered yet because I use it every day in every single project, and I'm surprised. So we're going to talk about the Sentry Tool. And so this module, which is written by Ortus Solutions, connects your CFML applications to send bug reports to Sentry.io. So can you remember when we started using this?
Yeah, yeah, it was quite a few years ago. We've always had a knack for logging, right? Obviously, writing logbox, and we started with Buglog HQ, which was a project by a friend of mine called Oscar Arevalo, and he was kind of a trendsetter in this kind of bug tracking services. That project kind of died off, but Sentry is a great SaaS solution for bug tracking. There's many of them, but Sentry is open source as well, and they have a free plan. They have a kind of host yourself plan as well. You can also do a paid plan. We met them at Nexus actually, and their project is just solid. And Brad basically at that conference whipped out this Sentry module, so you can use it basically from any ColdBox application. Any bug or any exception that occurs will be sent to Sentry. He also created a logbox bridge, so that means that you can actually send log messages into Sentry and have them charted and categorized in their time series database. So really, really cool stuff that you can do with Sentry from your Cold Fusion ColdBox applications. So really recommended. We use it for every single app that we've built and deployed, and for all the SaaS services that we're building on. And Brad has a lot of great insight into the actual exceptions that happen from stack traces to connecting it to the actual repositories, the actual code. You can actually see and highlight the actual code of exceptions. You can replay the exception, which is fantastic. So if you actually want to do some monitoring with Fusion Reactor or any other monitoring tool, you can actually do the replay from your desktop and just do the replay and actually monitor at the same time. So I cannot express how amazing this project is, and how you can help support it as well.
Yep, and as I mentioned earlier, this is actually a module that makes use of the function line numbers module that I believe John Berquist wrote, I believe. So that's a module that this module uses, and again, its community members are helping us build tools because they're building it for us. And I was right; it is John Berquist. And so yeah, that's a great little module. And again, I use this for my Vue.js apps. I use it for my Quasar apps that run on Android devices. It reports back to, so I can bring all those different ones together. So it's kind of neat that we have all these little tools, and Sentry does a great job of all of them. I used to hear them advertising on all these different podcasts that it was on. Like, they were dumping money into everything. So it's a really good system. Again, for most sites, you can probably live on their free plan. And then if you want to host it yourself, you can do that too. So it's a great option.
There's another alternative called Rollbar, and we have a module for that as well. So Rollbar is another Sentry-like application. They don't allow you to do hosted versions of it, but it is SaaS. But there's a free plan as well, and there's also a Rollbar module for it.
Yep, and I know Kai Koenig built a Raygun one for that. Then all of these sort of tie into Logbox. The cool thing is too, it doesn't have to be just errors. Like, I actually have it when my Docker images deploy, or a server starts up. I send a Sentry notification so I know that something started or ended. When I can even use it for keeping track of users if they log in or not. And if an error happens and there's a logged in user, it actually has the logged in user information in the error, so I know which user it had it on, which page. It's really cool to see some of the detail it has. So really awesome. And I thought we'd mention that one before, but we've just mentioned it in like 5 other modules that use Sentry or link to Sentry or talk about Sentry. So here we go. Sentry. It's a great little tool. Go get it on ForgeBox.io. Okay, next up, we have a VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. And this one is a new feature. It wasn't actually an extension, but it's part of VS Code 1.64 that was released not too long ago now. But it has all sorts of cool features in it. But one of them is what they call the file nesting. And so a lot of times in VS Code, you've got ways to like fold code inside of a file or whatnot. But this actually allows you to fold files into a subgroup in your side menus. For those watching, you'll see that it'll actually have a little group. For example, main.typescript, main.ts. What it allows you to do is configure it so anytime you have a file.ts, it'll actually group several of the related files together, and so you can actually collapse them in your menu. And so a lot of times you'll have things where maybe you have let's say a user CFC with a user service and maybe a user gateway or user DAO. You could configure it to basically allow the user to be a subgroup, and when you click expand, it would show you all the related files based on that. And so you can configure it. This little blog post sort of gives more description on it, tells you how to go set the setting and how to set your little configuration. But it's kind of cool. You can just set up your own patterns, so we can use it for Cold Fusion, even though the examples are different things. But it gives some examples for for different developers. So this has got a good example for Angular developers, for example. But you'll see like in the little video, like the feature, you can actually group all your feature stuff together, and then it just shrinks them up. And so it's kind of neat. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of a neat little tip. And again, that's not even an extension. That's just built straight into VS Code. It's just one of the configuration options. Change your settings and away you go. But that made me start thinking about how we organize some of our code and our tests and everything else. I'm like, I wonder if we could tweak some of that, basically if you have the test file open as well as the normal file and it's named the right way, that we could have the collapsing automatically do that. And I was like, ooh, that'd be nice. You have your user file, your user service, and then the user test and the user service test, and with the right settings, we might be able to group them all together nicely. So I was like,
Something
So,
to check out.
yeah. So it got me thinking, because I saw something the other day about how people in some languages actually put their tests in the same file that they write their production code, and when they deploy it to production, it pulls the test and removes it from the compiled code. And I was like, sometimes you have code which is so separate, and you've got 4 different folders you're working from, and so I was like, interesting. Like, this type of folding might solve some of those same dilemmas, So, anyways, got me thinking. So, that's your VS Code tip of the week.
We should have a little jingle for this tip of the week, Gavin.
Okay. Well, just add a little more into the production here. We'll get polished. Don't worry.
The tip of the week.
So, next up, we got time to thank all our awesome Patreon supporters. So why is it important that they support us, Luis?
Because they need to show love. They need to show us love. No, but it's really important because it really helps. I mean, we do this for the community. We do so many things for the community because we know we want this community to keep succeeding, keep growing. We're super motivated. And thank you so much for supporting us. And like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you have a bronze package, you actually will get a ForgeBox Pro and a CFCast subscription as a perk of that patronage. And the higher the patronage, obviously, the more goodies that you get as well. So look it up. We have lots of patrons helping and assisting the community. And, thank you so much for everything that the people are doing to support us.
Yep. And remember, on the community.ortussolutions.com site, you get that little profile badge. You have your own little private forum access to. So those are some of the perks there as well. And usually, once we get to a certain point, we're only supposed to read the names of people on a certain level or higher. But, we don't have a ton. So we try and support everybody right now. We thank everybody by name. We mess up their names, but that's okay because it means we love you.
What we do, right, Gavin?
Yeah, but we do what we can. We even have like little phonics next to the name just so we can try and remember how to pronounce some of the trickier ones. Those who sent us videos, we appreciate it. We try to take it into consideration. But since you're not on as much as me, I think it's your turn to mess up the names.
I still don't know how to say Ben's last name. I don't know if it's Ben Nadal or Ben Nadal. The Latino in me wants to say Nadel. So can we get something from Ben to tell us how to actually say his last name?
He actually did tell us on one of the episodes. He's guest on one of these. I think we did a Christmas special with him a couple of years ago and everything. And he did tell me, and of course I don't remember because again you've got 3 different ways to say it, and I can't remember the right one. So it's my fault that we murdered every week, Ben. But we still love you.
We'll do it the Latino way, and then we'll
you can get away with that. I can't do that. So.
Anyways. We'll start by thanking Mr. John Wilson, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Belanger, Dan Card, Jonathan Parrott, Jeffrey McGee from Sunstar Media 6, Dean Monder, Joseph Lamorie, Don Bellamy, Jan Janek, Lakshmat Turtohadi, Carl von Stetten, Jeremy Adams, Didier Lesniki, Matthew Clemente, Daniel Garcia, Scott Steinbach from Agri Tracking Systems, Ben Nadel, Brett Deline, Kai Koenig, Charlie Earhart, Jonas Eriksson, Jason Daiger, Sean Oden, Matthew Darby, Ross Phillips, Edgardo Cabezas, Patrick Flynn, Stephanie Monge, John Wish, Kevin Wright, and Peter Amidi. Thank you so much for supporting us.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely goes a long way, and it means that we have more funds to support some of the other open source initiatives, including, like I said, the S3 storage for ForgeBox. It means you don't even have to have a place to put your ForgeBox things. ForgeBox will do it for you. We'll store it on S3, obviously up to a certain size, but it's pretty generous, so definitely enough. And again, if you come watch my webinar on ForgeBox, you'll learn more about that too. So. But again, a lot of great content. Thanks a lot for joining me, Luis. And we'll see everybody next week.
Anytime, Gavin.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.